This month, as many of you know, we're studying Sufism. One of the great Sufi saints is a woman named Rabia, which is probably an unfortunate name in a Spanish context. But she had no Rabia in her. And she was famous for writing many beautiful poems that simply exuded divine love. And one of the lines that I like of hers is, "My love for God takes up every moment of my existence. I don't even have a second to hate the devil." And I think it's hatred of the devil that is the problem that most egoic minds have. And of course, the devil is always an internal devil that then we project on somebody outside and hate them very self-righteously, right? They deserve to be hated. They're narcissists, right? Or they're angry or mean or bullies or whatever, right? And so when we hate the devil, we're hating a part of ourselves, and the ego lives in self-hatred. And then by projecting that into the world, we cut ourselves off from God. And it's only the love of God that will enable us to recognize that everyone is an incarnation of the divine. Everyone here, everyone, everywhere is infinitely beautiful, infinitely precious. And if we see behind the ego, even if they are in a state of self-hatred and projecting the devil on themselves, if we see behind that, we cannot help but feel love and see ourselves in every other being. See the real self, the divine self, the one self. And so that's what we do in meditation. We come to peace with the devil through offering God's love to that poor, estranged fragment of consciousness that has been cut off from the source. And it's actually that estrangement from God that is the cause of all of our anxiety. And anxiety, in turn, is the cause of creating defense mechanisms and all of the addictions, fears, depression, all the other vexations that keep us in a state unable to love God and unable to stop hating the devil. And that anxiety has been analyzed actually very well by a modern Catholic theologian named Hans Urs von Balthasar, very great thinker. He and Kierkegaard are the two Western writers on anxiety who have plunged into the spiritual dimension of it, I think, the most deeply. And he says there are three forms of anxiety. One is morbid anxiety, we could call it neurotic or psychotic anxiety. Then there is existential anxiety, and then redemptive anxiety. The morbid is the fear of fear itself, and it is this projection of a demon that is our own inner demon. And it can't be healed because we believe that that other person that we are hating really does deserve it. And as long as we're in that delusion of self-righteousness, our relationship to reality is morbid. It's not a loving, it's not a life-enhancing state. We cannot say yes to life. We cannot affirm our own existence. We can deny or hate the existence of the other, but we cannot affirm our existence as a being of love. As long as we're hating, as long as we want vengeance, as long as we have some grudge, we cut ourselves off. So that's the morbid. But then there's the existential level, which is healthier, but it's still egoic. It's still a belief that you're a bodily being, an impermanent being in a physical world, and you're always going to have an anxiety about death if you're in that state, and of pain and of abandonment, etc., etc. So how do we get over the existential anxiety. We can only do it if we realize we're not bodily beings at all, that the body is simply the vessel, the temple of the spirit that we are. And really detach from the identification with the form, the gender, the attitudes that have congealed around the bodily personality. We are not persons. The word person means mask. We are that which shines through the mask. We are the light. And through that detachment from the body consciousness and the ego consciousness that goes with it, we can again realize our connection with God. Now, the redemptive anxiety is there even after you feel the connection with God, because there's always a fear, but what happens when I die if God doesn't take me to heaven? What happens if I fail to overcome original sin or whatever else? And the only way to get past the redemptive anxiety is to realize that you are already not just a child of God, not just a being of light who is a spark of God, but that you are actually one with that Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is your ultimate and true identity, here and now and always. And it was that identity that had been masked by all of these layers of identification that was cut off from God. So even at the level of the soul, there is still some anxiety. But when we transcend the soul and we recognize that we are the Atman, that is a microcosm of the macrocosmic God, then all anxiety ends at that point. We are liberated. And that's the path that all of the religions teach at the highest levels, the most esoteric levels. And it's the simple truth of our being. And so all we are here to do in meditation is to recall that this is our true self. We are that supreme beingness, which is a state of pure love. Formless, bodiless, non-objective, non-realizable as any object that you can conceive or describe, but realizable in the moment of surrender that transcends the mind, that transcends the desire to grasp or control. It's in that moment of surrender that we achieve the salvation that we seek. So let's use this evening as an opportunity to go beyond the redemptive anxiety and achieve that liberation in life, salvation. And realize that our sins indeed are forgiven and our hatred of the devil is forgiven. And let's forgive all the devils that we have hated and been hated by, and achieve again divine union. Let's meditate.